In 1980, the man who would design one of the most successful handguns in history had never built a firearm in his life. He had never worked for a weapons manufacturer. He had never served as a military engineer. He ran a small workshop that made curtain rods, knives, and plastic components. And yet, within just a few years, his design would become the standard sidearm of police departments, militaries, and civilians across the entire world, while an entire urban legend grew up around it, claiming it could slip past airport security completely undetected. None of it was true, but the myth spread faster than the facts ever could. This is the story of an outsider who redesigned the handgun from first principles, and the pistol that became a household name almost by accident. In the early 1980s, the Austrian military needed a new sidearm. The country's armed forces were preparing to replace their aging service pistol, and the Ministry of Defense opened a competition to find its replacement. Established firearms manufacturers across Europe, some with decades of handgun design experience, prepared to compete for the contract. It seemed like a straightforward process. The most experienced companies would submit refined variations of designs they already understood deeply, and one of them would win. Nobody expected a manufacturer of curtain rods and pocket knives to enter the competition at all, let alone win it. But Gaston Glock, the owner of a small Austrian engineering company, saw something the established manufacturers didn't. He had connections within Austria's defense ministry through his existing work supplying military equipment, and when he learned about the upcoming handgun contract, he treated it not as an impossible reach, but as an engineering problem he hadn't solved yet. He had no handgun of his own to modify. He had no design history to build on. What he had was a blank sheet of paper, a tight deadline, and a habit of ignoring how things had always been done. Glock's approach to the competition was almost the opposite of what anyone would have expected. Instead of assuming his lack of firearms experience was a disadvantage, he treated it as an opportunity. Rather than starting from an existing design, he began by consulting with police officers, soldiers, and firearms experts, asking a simple question. What did they actually dislike about the handguns they already carried? The answers, gathered systematically, painted a clear picture. Existing service pistols were often too heavy for extended carry. They had too many small parts prone to failure. Their mechanisms were often needlessly complex, making maintenance and training more difficult than necessary. Glock studied dozens of existing handgun patents, looking for ideas worth borrowing and mistakes worth avoiding, all without the bias of having designed a competing product himself. Then, he made a decision that would define the entire project. The new pistol's frame, the housing that traditionally required precision-machined steel or aluminum, would be built primarily from a high-strength engineering polymer instead. At the time, this was a radical departure. Handguns were metal. That was simply understood, almost as a law of nature within the industry. Glock didn't see why it had to stay that way. Working with a small, dedicated team, Glock spent months refining a design built around three core principles: fewer parts, lighter weight, and mechanical simplicity. The result had roughly a third fewer components than many competing service pistols of the era, a dramatic reduction that meant fewer things to break, fewer parts to clean, and a much simpler weapon to train new users on. The polymer frame also made the pistol significantly lighter than steel-framed competitors, a meaningful advantage for soldiers and officers who carried a sidearm for entire shifts or deployments without a break. Perhaps the most distinctive engineering choice was the pistol's internal safety system. Rather than relying on an external safety lever that a user had to manually engage or disengage, the design incorporated a series of automatic internal safeties built directly into the trigger mechanism itself, requiring no separate action from the shooter beyond pulling the trigger correctly. It was, in effect, a pistol designed to be as simple as physically possible without sacrificing reliability, an approach that echoed, in its own way, the same philosophy that had driven military rifle design in an entirely different corner of the Cold War. When Glock submitted his design to the Austrian military trials in 1982, it faced intense scrutiny from evaluators skeptical of a plastic-framed pistol built by a company with zero handgun manufacturing history. The testing was brutal by design. Thousands of rounds fired continuously, extreme temperature exposure, submersion tests, drop tests onto concrete. The pistol kept working. In 1982, the Austrian military officially adopted Glock's pistol as its new standard sidearm, designating it the P80, though it would soon become known by a simpler name derived directly from its creator. The Glock 17, named for the 17 rounds its magazine could hold and for being the 17th patent Glock's company had filed, entered military service against nearly every expectation set at the start of the competition. For established firearms manufacturers who had spent the competition assuming their experience alone would secure the contract, the result was a genuine shock. A company with no handgun manufacturing history had just outperformed some of the most respected names in the industry. Word of the design spread quickly through military and law enforcement circles across Europe, drawing curiosity, skepticism, and, increasingly, serious interest. But its most significant transformation was still ahead. The moment it crossed the Atlantic and entered a market unlike any it had faced before. When the Glock 17 arrived in the United States in the mid-1980s, it encountered a public and a media environment that had never seen a firearm built this way. A pistol constructed largely from plastic, at a time when almost no one outside the firearms industry understood how modern polymer engineering actually worked, was an irresistible target for sensationalized speculation. A persistent rumor began circulating, amplified by news coverage, and even referenced in political debate, claiming the Glock 17 could pass through airport metal detectors completely undetected, making it, according to the myth, a weapon of choice for hijackers and terrorists. The claim wasn't true. The Glock 17's barrel, slide, springs, and internal firing mechanism were, and remain, made of metal, fully detectable by standard security screening. Only portions of the frame use the polymer material, and even that frame included enough metal content to register clearly on detection equipment. But the myth was simple, frightening, and easy to repeat. Far easier than the more complicated engineering reality. It spread through media coverage faster than manufacturers or firearms experts could effectively correct it. Ironically, the controversy may have done more for the pistol's name recognition than any advertising campaign could have achieved on its own. By the time the facts caught up with the fiction, Glock had already become a household name across the United States, recognized even by people who had never held a firearm in their lives. Once the initial controversy faded, the Glock 17's actual engineering advantages began speaking for themselves. Police departments across the United States, evaluating sidearms through rigorous trials rather than headlines, increasingly found the same qualities that had impressed Austrian military evaluators years earlier: simplicity, reliability, lightweight, and remarkably low maintenance requirements compared to many competing designs. Throughout the late 1980s and into the 1990s, law enforcement agencies across the country began adopting Glock pistols in large numbers. a trend that would eventually make Glock one of the most widely carried sidearm brands among American police departments. The company expanded its lineup well beyond the original Glock 17, introducing variants in different sizes, calibers, and configurations, all built around the same core engineering philosophy Gaston Glock had established from the very beginning. Its cultural footprint expanded just as dramatically as its law enforcement presence. Films, television, and music increasingly reference the pistol by name, cementing Glock not just as a brand, but as a kind of cultural shorthand for a modern handgun altogether. A level of name recognition remarkably few firearms manufacturers have ever achieved. What makes the Glock 17 story remarkable isn't simply that it succeeded. It's that success came from someone who, by every conventional expectation of the firearms industry, shouldn't have been in a position to succeed at all. Gaston Glock brought no inherited assumptions about how a handgun was supposed to be built. He didn't carry decades of industry tradition telling him a frame had to be metal, or that a certain number of components was simply unavoidable. That absence of assumption, more than any single technical breakthrough, may be the real reason the design broke so cleanly from everything that came before it. Decades later, Glock pistols remain among the most widely issued sidearms among law enforcement and military users worldwide, continuously refined, but still built around the same foundational principles established in that first design: simplicity, reliability, and a willingness to question why things had always been done a certain way. It's a lesson that extends well beyond firearms design. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come not from decades of specialized experience, but from someone willing to ask sincerely why something couldn't simply be built differently. He had never designed a firearm before. He had no history in the industry, no inherited assumptions, and no reason to believe an established manufacturer wouldn't win the contract instead. What he had was a willingness to ask questions nobody else in the competition thought to ask, and the discipline to build an answer from nothing but engineering logic and other people's honest complaints. A myth once threatened to define his creation forever. The engineering outlasted the myth. An outsider, a blank sheet of paper, a pistol carried by millions. If you want to understand the machines that quietly shape the modern world, subscribe, because sometimes history isn't only written by people, sometimes it's written by the tools they built.